Buenas tardes a todos los seguidores de la Feria Virtual del Libro. En estos momentos nos encontramos con Georgios Vardakis. Good evening to all the followers of the Feria Virtual del Libro, España. Now we are with Georgios Vardakis. Go ahead, Georgios.
Hello everyone and thank you for joining in. I'm Georgios Vardakis. I am a concert pianist. I am currently a director of a piano music school in London and a performance scientist. Today we are going to talk about music and psychology. Psychology in music, it's not the usual psychology that we are used to think. It's not the psychology that we are addressing when we have a problem like OCD, like a social phobia or something similar. It's under the umbrella of performance science, which is a science that seeks to understand how performance is developed, how we think, what is the role of the audience, what are actually the processes in performing, and many other aspects that has to do with the performance. I'm gonna present you some skills that a performer should have in order to be able to keep an elite and a high standard in performance. And then I will present some strategies of how that could be achieved by developing a couple of mental skills. Let me share my screen. Okay, good. The performance skills could be divided in three main categories. We have the musical skills, we have the physical skills, and the mental skills. The musical skills could be divided in two main categories. We have the technique and we have the musicianship. The technique is something that is what we call like the ability of actually playing, of actually projecting, and how we use our body in order to make the sound that we want. And the musicianship is how we understand the text, how we can communicate what the composer tries to communicate through ourselves. And of course, these two factors are combined and they could never be separated. For example, technique helps musicianship helps technique, they go together. Of course, we have as well the physical skills, which are the posture, mobility, speed, and many other more, which I'm not going to present now because it's a bit out of topic. And we have the mental skills. The mental skills, as you can see, could be the commitment, sense of self, perspective, self-growth, feeling in control, positive thinking, concentration, focusing, spontaneity, creativity, flexibility, and enjoyment. As you can see, the mental skills that are required for a good, what we call a good performance, are a lot more than the musical skills. And just to mention that I'm currently just projecting what Orling thinks as the most important factors and what he found from his study. There are a lot more mental skills, and the problem is that currently in our education we rarely find the development of these mental skills. Of course, as we said that the technique coexists with musicianship, the mental skills as well coexist with technique and musicianship, and also they coexist with the physical skills. The lack of education in such fields, in the development of mental skills, has been examined by many scientists, performance scientists, and it's quite. However, we see many universities now, especially in Canada, in the UK, in Australia, starting to develop these skills and projecting as much knowledge as they can in addressing to these skills. Here we can see from the ballet, it's just a diagram that projects the age of one and when the mental and cognitive development and the emotional development should start. As you can see, is around the age 11, 12 and up to 16, 17. However, the educational system does not focus on developing any mental and cognitive development. Not that students do not develop, but it's not the system is not directly addressing to the development of these skills. Now, what I'm going to present in later is how we can develop positive thinking and concentration and focusing through the self-talk. Self-talk is defined as what people say to themselves, either out loud or as a small voice inside their head. So it's important to remember that self-talk can be out loud. It can be is what we say with the sentences that we are using when we are talking to ourselves. Usually we do that when we are by ourselves and not when we are with others. But when we have with others, when we are socializing, the small voice inside our head, it constantly carries on. Another definition is that self-talk occurs whenever an individual thinks, whether making statements internally or externally, and self-talk, of course, could be automatic. So what we understand from this is that the self-talk, the sentences that we are using are actually thoughts. That doesn't mean that every thought is self-talk. Some thoughts could be something different, could be, for example, imagery. There are different cognitive processes and different ways that we are using the thoughts. However, self-talk is the most, I tend to believe that the self-talk is the most common one. And of course, it can be automatic. About the automaticity, we will talk later when I describe the self-talk categories. Brian Holmes, during his studies, when he collected around 90 sentences, if I remember well, and he studied these sentences in a tertiary level psychology students, he concluded that the categories, the self-talk could be divided in 4 main categories. We have the self-critical category, which is the category that we actually criticizing. We are criticizing when we are saying something. For example, if we say that we are in a performance and let's say that we are making a mistake, let's say that we're making a memory slip, for example. When we say that, oh, again, another memory slip. Even if we don't say that, if we think of that, is a self-talk sentence that we're using, and it has the form of, it has a critical form. We're criticizing what we are doing. The criticism could not be only to ourselves, it could be to anything. But however, the self-talk criticizing, the self-talk sentence, it's always a criticizing sentence. We have the self-reinforcing sentence, which is in a way the opposite of the self-critical. Is the category, it includes the sentences that we are actually trying to reinforce our emotions. We are trying to encourage ourselves, and we are looking on the positive side. Such examples could be, let's say that I have a memory slip, and I say, okay, it happens to everyone, let's carry on. This could be for someone a reinforcing sentence. Self-managing is a very important sentence for what we are going to talk about later. It has to do with the instructions that we give to ourselves. Usually we tend to use self-managing sentences when we're doing something for the first time, just because it's totally unknown to us. Think, for example, the first time that you tried to build something. What you did is that you tried to follow the guidance that you have, or the guidance that you thought it would be useful. So you were looking for every step and you were guiding yourself on every step. These are the self-talk, self-managing sentences. And finally, we have the self-social assessing sentences. These are some very dangerous, but also very interesting sentences. These sentences actually are the sentences that we do not use because we invented them. It's someone else's. We use someone else's words. In education, especially in musical education, we tend to see that a lot. We see a lot students projecting their teachers' ideas, their teachers' sentences, and the teacher's method in anything, even when they are performing a piece that they may not have studied with their teachers. Self-talk, of course, has effects. It has negative effects as well as positive effects. Here I present you some some general negative effects is the music performance anxiety that it can cause, and of course depression. Just to clarify, music performance anxiety is not the common anxiety we find in, for example, in social phobia or in an OCD situation. More clearly in an OCD or in a social phobia, for example, the severity of the anxiety is much higher than in music performance anxiety. The music performance anxiety is an anxiety that it has noticed that exists in any performer, almost any performer actually, who wants to perform not only in music but in any kind of performance. It can be in sport performance, it can be in anything. Studies have found that over 70 or something, if I remember well, 70 or 80% of the performers tend to show performance anxiety. However, they may not have general anxiety in their daily lives. Here I also present you some literature that you can find more about that if you are interested. Of course, self-talk has positive effects. Many, not only Bright Hope that I mentioned before, but others as well have noticed the positive effects of the reinforcing and the instructional self-talk. Self-talk, as it is written here, plays a critical role in the self-control processes. It is important for inhibiting impulses, influences reactions and behavioral responses, and of course it enhances concentration. What is happening is that we have thoughts from the moment we start building our thoughts from the moment we are born. And we have, I would like to consider that as the base of our way of thinking is the beliefs or the convictions we have. And we are building our thoughts according to this foundation we have built. Of course, this foundation can change, but it's not that easy because many things could happen automatically. We are so influenced by that, it's like we are ignoring the reality of the other side of the thoughts. We tend to believe that the way we are thinking is the correct way, not because it is the correct way, but because this is the way we know. We don't know the other way. That's why our thoughts and eventually the self-talk influences our reactions, influences our behaviors. And it's very important, since we influence our behavior, to be able to control our thoughts and our self-talk in order to control ourselves. Instructional self-talk also enhances concentration, and we are going to talk about that soon. In another study that Roland did, he found that music performers actually do use self-talk to enhance their performances, professional performers, okay? He found out that they try to achieve a performance focus, an individual performance focus. What they do is that they guide the way of thinking, they guide themselves before and during the performance in order to achieve what they want to achieve. This can be actually more explained through the attentional selectivity. Attentional selectivity is the process of focusing on an object for a certain period, one said. Another one said that letting some information into the information processing system, whereas other information is screened or ignored. The first definition is mostly referred to the senses that we use in order to focus ourselves. For example, when we want to distract ourselves, for example, we tend to look at something, or when we look at something, then we guide our attention to that thing that we are looking, or we could decide to listen to something and direct our attention to what we are listening to. For example, if we are in a concert, we could direct our listening to what we are doing. This is one form of attentional selectivity that could be guided by instructional self-talk. And the second definition is about letting some information into the information processing system, actually to our mind, okay? And it's what we decide to let get into our mind and what we decide to not get. Of course, these things do not happen consciously always, and there are many factors that lead us to leave many informations unconsciously, and our habit and our beliefs tend to follow unconsciously again many unhelpful self-talk sentences. Cognitive behavioral psychology is a psychology that actually works on the thoughts. It's based on the notion that the way one thinks about an event determines in part how one responds to that event. This is what Beck had said, and Beck is the father of cognitive behavioral psychology, and he has said this thing in many different ways. If you would like to find more about that, I totally recommend to start from Beck about cognitive behavioral psychology. And what they do in cognitive behavioral therapies is that they use a diary. They use a diary on which guides one to change the way of thinking, to change the thoughts, to change the emotion, and therefore the emotions that have occurred from their thoughts. What I thought is that why don't we try to use that diary in music, since no one is addressed to the self-talk, since no one uses self-talk. Maybe it will be a good way to start altering our negative self-talk to reinforcing and distraction. And I thought that using a similar form of a diary could be very helpful for ourselves, first of all, and also for our students and for anyone who wants to improve or enhance the performance. The diary could take this form. As you can see here, we have the date that something happened. Okay, for example, let's say I will give you an example so you could follow me in a better way. Let's say that I'm practicing in my house. Usually we tend to see people practicing and playing again and again and again the same piece until it becomes better. And they hope that it will become better. Usually that doesn't happen. Yeah, what I mean is that it doesn't become better. Usually it becomes worse because we are not thinking of what we're doing. And many times when I talk with colleagues and students after a concert, they say that, hey, they don't remember anything about the concert. They don't remember what happened. They don't remember what they were thinking. And this is absolutely fine. It's not a problem. This is our nature. However, there are others that they remember things. They have specific instructions they follow during their performance. Is it possible to guide a performance through instructions? I believe that it is possible. And since Roland found that many professional performers do that, it seems that it is possible to do it. What we could do, for example, if we are practicing, is that let's say that when practicing and something happens. Let's go back to the old example that we have a memory slip. We could stop then and think about what we did. Actually, what did we say to ourselves? Usually we say something like, again, another memory slip. Not again, not again, or we just skip it. It's good to not skip things. It's good to go back and always correct and try to alter these things. Otherwise, they become a bad habit. And not only that, but we are forcing our negative self-talk. It becomes more and more a bad habit to us. So you could write down, for example, the date. Initially here we have the date. Then we could have what exactly did you say, okay? And then how did that make you feel? Of course, as we talked before, self-talk has effects. We can have negative effects, we can have positive effects. Usually we tend to write in these diaries the bad effects because the negative self-talk is what we are trying to alter. By showing also the 4 categories that I presented before, reinforcing, instruction, criticizing, or someone else's word, it could help one to identify the effects of the self-talk. As I said before, a criticizing sentence is still a criticizing sentence. It's not a reinforcing sentence. And what it tends to do is to lead to negative emotions. Of course, the process wouldn't be completed if we wouldn't alter the negative self-talk and we try to enhance the positive self-talk that we could benefit during a performance and during our practice. What you could do is that you could write an instructional sentence or a reinforcing sentence. It depends on the kind of the situation you are. For example, if you are before a concert, well, you could not use too many instructional sentences if you think that the audience is too big. So maybe something, the situation is too serious, for example. Maybe you need some reinforcing sentence. If you are in during the plane, definitely you need instructional sentences. They are a lot more helpful and they guide you during your performance. And of course, they help you guide your mind, your focus to what is needed and not to other things that could cause problems. Science has found that we can focus on one thing, if I remember well, around in about 4 or 5 seconds maximum. What's happening after these 4 or 5 seconds? Another thought is coming. When we perform, probably it will be another self-talk, maybe another self-talk sentence. It's good to be able to guide that sentence and to form a base. Let's say that we are trying to change our foundation of talking, self-talking during our practice and therefore during our performance as well, and try to build a way of thinking that it's actually helpful. Of course, in order to be, you can absolutely apply that to yourself. But if you are trying to apply these things to this, for example, this diary to one of your students, you have to be aware of not to influence the students with the way of the sentences that you believe are correct. You have to find what the student wants, how the students react. For example, I have some kids that were very much interested about Frozen, the TV, well, I'm at the film. Actually, I'm not even sure if it's a TV film or a series because I don't know it. For me, the Frozen means nothing. For them, it means something. This is the difference. This is my reality. This is their reality. I'm not trying to fix my reality. I'm trying to fix their reality. So what you could do is that you could guide your teaching through questions and only through questions. Then you could understand the character, and then what you could do is that you could only suggest. Be careful what you are saying to your students. We tend to influence badly our students a lot. It's important also to know that how we can form a sentence. The sentence has to be short and specific. Let's go back to the sentence I created. This is already a big sentence. It takes too much time to say this is the dominant chord. For example, if we are trying to find the next position in the keyboard or the next position in whatever instrument you are playing, it's already a very big sentence. We do not have that much time, and it takes too much time only to think about it. What I personally tend to do here is that when I'm trying to find positions, I always create a map before my performance of what I will actually think during the performance, how I will guide my focus. And what I'm actually thinking is that C, I know what that C means because I put it there. So it has a meaning to me. Okay, it has to be also here says with attention and meaning. For me, it has a meaning. I know exactly, it is specific, and I know exactly what it means. It doesn't have to be longer than that. Of course, it has to be in first person and present because we're addressing to ourselves. Okay, it's a sentence that says, okay, I will do that. It doesn't mean anything because it's not what you are doing now. It's not affecting you in the way you are focusing at the moment. It will affect you when you will do it. Well, obviously, it has to be positive. It cannot be negative because of the self-talk effects. And it has to be kind. I hope no one believes that with something not kind, you could achieve anything positive. I have to mention, though, that there are some limitations of this method. First of all, as I said, this is a similar method is used by cognitive behavioral therapists. We have to be careful because we are not therapists. We may not be able to control the situation. That means that if, for example, you take this diary and you apply it to your students, many emotions, personal emotions, many issues could be written down. You may face many things that you you had never observed, and actually these things could be very serious. In the UK, before we are about to teach, we get training on the safeguarding. Safeguarding has to do with the health of the student and the protection of the student. Health is not only the physical health; it's also the mental health. If you notice anything suspicious, you have to address to someone someone who is trained. You have to suggest a therapy. You have to do the best for the student, because at the end of the day, we are working for the students and not for ourselves.
Georgios.
Yes.
We only got 5 minutes left.
That's all right. That's all right. Thank you.
Okay.
As I was saying, this is about our students, and as I mentioned before, we have to be careful on how we are transferring information. What we believe it's meaningful to us, that doesn't mean that it's meaningful to our students. If you feel that you do not know how to use these things, you are totally unaware, please hire someone who is trained, someone who can control these processes. I'm conscious about time, so I will slowly end to the end of these presentations. I would like to thank you once again. If you need anything, you can always, if you have any questions about the presentations, or if you need any more guidance, you can always go to my website, georgiosvardakis.com. There is a contact form there, and I will be more than happy to help you with any way I can. I believe that knowledge should be shared, and we should all try to develop new ways of education. Currently in the UK, through my school, that I'm directing, we will present, hopefully when the COVID is over, we'll present some workshops that have to do with the enhancing of the mental skills for piano performance. Will be specifically that one. I'm hoping that I will see more things like that happening in other countries like Spain and Greece, or in South America. And but definitely this will increase the educational level and the performance level all over the world. I would like to thank you once again for joining me. Apologize again for the small delay. Well, not that small, but for the delay that we had. I hope you learned something today and you find it interesting. And looking forward to see more ideas around this field. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Georgios. We're very thankful for you joining us on the Feria Virtual de Libro España.
Thank you for having me here.